Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Men of Valor podcast. Travis Watson here. I'm one of the executives in this ministry, and it is such a privilege to just be with you guys, whether you're catching the audio version or now we're on YouTube. So some of you are watching this streaming, not necessarily live, it's the playback, but we are just thankful for this opportunity. We say it all the time. We're just overwhelmingly amazed. I was thinking this morning as I was just spending some time thinking about our topic and getting the recording going, just about all the things we've seen God do in the short season and now 5 episodes with this one. So 1 year and 5 episodes. We've just seen God do incredible things. And we're in awe of that because it really doesn't have much to do with us. We're just trying to be faithful and show up. And so we pray this portion of our ministry is an encouragement to you. I want to ask, if you haven't done it yet, go in and go ahead and give us a review or a rating on any of the major platforms. And the reason we ask you to do that, the more we get of that, the more it pushes the Men of Valor podcast to the front and to pop up in people's feeds and recommendations. And we've seen just that be a transformational tool that God has used in people's lives as not even looking for us, but it pops up in their feed and they begin to listen, and marriages have been restored. God has brought people to salvation, and we've just seen transformation happen in people's lives. And so it is an honor. It is a joy to be able to do this with you. We're going to get going here in just a few minutes. We'll have some announcements here at the end for you, and excited because it is now November, entering into feast month for some of you, and thankful month for some of you, maybe both of that for a lot of us, and just excited for the holidays. And so this month we're going to be focusing on a brand new topic. We wrapped up relationships last month, and so in November 2023 we're going to be talking about family. We'll be talking about family, and today I have a very special host. So if you've been watching the stream here on YouTube, you see my host with me. But I'm so thankful to have a guest and a dear friend, Mr. Bill Schein from Nevada, U.S. How are you doing, Mr. Schein? It's good to see you, buddy.
I'm doing well, man. It's early, but I got my stuff and I'm ready to go. And I think I was up an hour ago, just excited about the topic and excited to hang out with my brother from the East Coast and just be a part of something cool. Was able to meet Travis at I think the second Men of Valor conference in Lula, Georgia. And it was just, as soon as we met, it was like brothers from the beginning.
Yeah, that's so true. So good. And we know we're loved because West Coast time, 3 hours difference than us. You guys are frequently getting up super early to join us or to be a part or to encourage us. And I thank you so much. It's as we were talking even yesterday leading up to this morning's conversation, it's such a joy to just be able to talk to your friend. But then you add to that the joy of Christ, the joy of the topic, the joy of what we share as common bonds. And it literally becomes overflowing joy, which is really, really just powerful and awesome. So thank you, brother. Appreciate you being here. The rest of you, hang on. It's going to get good. I know Mr. Schein. I know his heart. So we're going to have some great conversations. I can't wait to get into some of this stuff. And hopefully we're challenged. Hopefully we all grow by something the Holy Spirit prompts us with or raises in this episode of the podcast. So without any more time taken away, you ready? Let's get after it, guys.
This is the Men of Valor podcast. We exist to help men grow as disciples of Jesus.
Welcome to Season 2. We're glad you're here.
Let me tell you, I once was a sinner, but I am no longer a sinner. I am a saint. I am a son of the living God Most High.
Go home, embrace your wife with no expectations, and tell her that you love her. And ask her, how can I lead you? Tell me what you need. Be transparent, be open, be honest.
But if we arm ourselves and we never use what we have, that's useless.
Hey guys, thank you so much for listening. Here are your hosts, Travis Watson, Eric Stewart, Jordan Loggins, and Randall Ballou. Let's get after it.
All right, guys. And as we said, just welcome back to join us for this episode number 5 of season 2 of Men of Valor podcast. Our topic this month is on the topic of family. I know personally from our host, because we're great friends, Mr. Bill Schein. I know, Bill, how important family is to you, how much you just value family. I've seen it firsthand. I'm blessed to have a front row seat into your life. So I get to see you as a dad, a husband, a friend, just so many different roles you wear, and you do them all so well and so faithfully. But yet you're flawed like me. I don't want to set you up too high, but it's the joy of the front row seat, right? We learn from each other's successes and wins and each other's faults and failures as well. So before we get into all that, I know you're new for some of our people that are maybe listening for the first time, or maybe they're just discovering the ministry last few weeks. So I wanted to see if you could just take a few minutes, tell us a little bit about Mr. Schein, whatever you want to share from your background or your story, and we'll keep moving from there right into our topic. So, Mr. Schein, tell us about yourself.
First and foremost, I used to be the Christian guy that was like showing up at the reunion for school, and all you did was reel off your business card with all of your successes that you had in life. And then as I matured in my faith in Christ, I quickly figured out that that's just another mask. That's just another thing to put in front of me to try and impress people. Humbly but proudly, I am just a child of God, and blessed to be a child of God who had some family members growing up who, no matter what was going on in my life, no matter what issues or pain or problems we're having, there was somebody who took me to church growing up and made sure that every Sunday we had an opportunity to have a good meal, a healthy family to be around, and a chance to be in front of God. And so first, I just acknowledge that I am married for, gee whiz, almost 30 years now. Coming up to my beautiful bride, Miss Schein, who is just a powerhouse of a woman, and somebody I learn from daily, who has a humble heart for God and humility to love others, but also a mama bear for Jesus too, and will have no issue bringing out the full armor of God when Jesus prompts her to. And as Travis has put out, I'm involved with the ministry in SoulCon for a number of years now, and proud to serve in that capacity as doing teachings and devotionals, and just being a part of a community of men that has transformed many of my brothers here in the state of Nevada. I do live in Reno, Nevada, out on the West Coast, but every opportunity I can, I take to get involved with, whether it's the Men of Valor ministries or the SoulCon ministries or even our local ministries. My bride and I, over the years, have done some different things with young adults, college fellowships. It wouldn't be surprising in our home to have 25 or 30 young adults hanging around the kitchen table, eating all my food. But also a father of, I always say we have 4 sons. 2 are our own, and 2 are kind of our bonus sons that were part of our lives in their teen and adult years. And so we love to have anybody welcome at our table. During the holidays, there's usually quite a bit of variety at our table, and not just our own kids, their friends too. Whoever didn't have a home seems to wind up at my house raiding my refrigerator and drinking all my coffee, but we love every minute of it.
I love it. That's so good. Yeah, if you put food out, they will come. That's just a proverb you can put in the bank. And if you love them well in the process, they'll keep coming back. So awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Bill. And that brings us right into, so I mentioned we're talking about family. This morning specifically, this episode specifically, we're going to talk about fatherhood, what it means to father sons and or daughters. I have a little bit of experience in both. Bill's mentioned their own boys that they have, but also he's had numerous, I'll call them kids for right now. They're young adults, some of them, but from all walks of life, all nationalities, all backgrounds, all belief systems. He's had, you name it, the gamut kind of come into his life, and Miss Shelley, who we love. If she happens to catch the playback later, she's a wonderful, just what's the word I'm looking for? Not an addition. She is a compliment. You two complement one another so well. I just love watching the dynamic. So someday I'm going to be around that table with you and get to watch it firsthand in person. I can't wait. But we're going to talk about fatherhood and what that looks like. And I want to stress this up front. We try and say this a lot. Like, Bill and I aren't presenting like we're experts on this, that we've got it all figured out. We are constantly in a state of learning, a state of making mistakes, doing things different, doing things better. Well, that didn't work. Let's try a different approach. We blow it with our kids, our adult children. I blow it with my adult children now as well. So we don't want to come across that way to you. And if we do, please give us grace and forgive us in that sense. But really, we're just going to have a conversation and talk about some things we've learned along the way, some things we would maybe suggest that have worked for us, some things maybe to avoid as you look at fatherhood. I don't know too many men that don't want to get better at being fathers. They may not voice that word, but there's an element in all of us, I believe, as men, that really desires to say, hey, I could do this better. I want to do it better. And fatherhood is certainly one of those things. So, Bill, I want to start with a hard question. I'm going to throw you a hard one to start with, and maybe it'll get easier from there. But what is the most interesting or challenging aspect, dynamic of being a father, of fathering children, of fathering young people that you've seen lately or in the last little while? What's been one of those things that's like, okay, this has taken me a little more time to work through?
I would say one of the things, at least one of the lessons learned, or an after action report kind of thing after some of my many failures and attempts, is that I can't want something more for my children than they want it. And I'll say it again. I can't want something more for my children, my adult children, than they want it. Sometimes it becomes more about me when I want it more than they want it. I mean, of course, I want something for them. That's a desire of every parent, to have that need. You want your kids to succeed. You want them to be better than you, in a sense. But they have to want it in order for it to happen. Because when I want it more than they do, it becomes more about me and less about them. And that can come back to bite me, because then the conversations become more about, well, here's what I would do, instead of helping them understand why they would want to do something.
That's good. And I think that same principle applies when children are younger too. And I didn't mention this up front, but my wife and I, we're blessed. We're a blended family. We have 10 kids, 2 biological together, 2 that we've adopted. And then we have children outside of that from all ages. Little Patrick, our youngest little character right now, he's 2.5, okay, and all the way up to a 26-year-old. So we kind of run the spectrum, and a lot of you know we do foster as well. So that's where my background comes into this. But I would say that same principle, when you see younger kids, like as a parent, you have more of an ability to kind of mandate them to want it, even when they don't. But true success comes when we're willing to take the time. And I think this is a huge point for us as fathers. When we're willing to take the time to get on their level, whether they're 5 years old or 22 years old, and say, let's have a conversation around this, like why it's important to, it could be anything, why it's important to respect authority, why it's important to follow through when you're asked to do something. Walking with them through that, as opposing to just mandating, you need to do this, because one creates a relationship and an eagerness to have that conversation further in the future. And I think one takes away from that. Would you agree with that? What have you seen that kind of play out?
Definitely. I mean, our relationship with Christ is more about transformation than it is instant. He makes us new, but sometimes making us that new is a continuous transformation process. It's not just I got saved and now all of a sudden I'm a perfect being and Jesus is in me and let's go save the day. When we're hanging out with our young kids or adult kids and helping them see life or helping them see what can be because of their relationship with Christ, it takes some time. It's more of a crock pot than it is a microwave solution.
Yeah.
crock pot things take a little bit of time. You got to simmer them, you got to get them in there. And then when the pressure builds in a crock pot, it actually makes it better versus just hitting the microwave, hitting the popcorn button, and in 3.5 minutes you're good, maybe with some burnt kernels. But that's kind of what we've taken is it's more a crock pot approach than it is a microwave style of teaching.
Yeah, that's so good. I think it's an important point. I didn't really intend on drilling down into this, but for men especially, we're very much, in general anyway, we're not all wired the exact same, but in general, we're very much of let's get it done and get on to whatever we got next kind of thing. How do I get this fixed right away so I can get on to the next part of the project or whatever else it might be? When it comes to fathering, you really do have to slow down. You really do have to stop. You have to think. You have to analyze. You have to ask questions sometimes, it's depending on the age of your children. But it really is that crock pot mentality of this isn't a quick, instantaneous thing. I think I fell into that trap a lot as a young father of, all right, I'm going to teach my children the right way to live as a follower of Christ and as a child of God. They're going to learn to be obedient right away. They're going to learn to use proper manners and be respectful of people. They're going to learn to take care of their space and the things around them. I'm going to just tell them over and over, and it's going to become part of their life. And I think sometimes my mistake was I've already told you 3 times. This is the 3rd time we're having this conversation. Like, you should get it by now, as opposed to realizing it's sometimes well into the adult years of continuing these conversations. And so for me, that means letting go of that instant microwave results and realizing, okay, I just got to be gracious, patient, and slow down and walk through this with them a little bit more. Do you find that harder now your kids are grown? Do you find that harder that they're adults or harder when they were children?
Oh, I totally find it different. I don't know that it's
Good.
harder. When you're children, we were me and my sisters, we were raised in a military family. Both my parents were Marines. The grandparents were active World War II veterans, and myself was in the service. So when I got married and had kids, I have an instruction booklet right here, and it says to do this, do this, do this, and do this. And by golly, that's the way it's going to be done. Come hell or high water, my road or their road kind of thing. And then I figured out that was all pointless and tossed it out with the bathwater because it didn't work. I learned really quickly as my kids came from children to adulthood that I had to fire myself. I had to understand that I had one job when they were 18 and under, but I have a different job when they're 18 and older, because I'm going to be their parent a lot longer from 18 going forward than I was from 18 down to birth. And it's almost like 2 different job descriptions. And I need to fire myself or resign from the first one and learn the new job description and go on to the second one, because it's going to be for the rest of their lives.
Wow.
And so it's actually longer. So to me now, it's not more important. It's just a different importance.
Wow. I'm just going to say it because that impacted me. If you're listening to this, you should mark the time in the podcast and go back and catch what you just said again. You're going to be a parent much longer after they're 18. That's so true. And it just switches how we process, because sometimes I think our mindset is, I got to get them to adulthood, right? I got to get them to that point where they're 18, 19. And yeah, it's not harder or easier. It's different. Spot on. No one tells you, hey, when your child becomes an adult, I've got 2 in the military and 1 that lives with us that's special needs. And no one tells you, like, okay, this is how you do it. Now it's your work as a parent is done. Now you just get to be their friend the rest of their life. No, I find myself having to ask frequently, do you need me to be dad right now? Do you need me to be a counselor? Your financial strategist, your career planner, your buddy, your friend, I had to learn that the hard way, especially when my boy was at boot camp with the Marine Corps. That was a tough one after he got out. I was very much of, well, remember I said that, and it was like, Dad, I'm just talking to you right now. I don't need, the instruction from the teacher, so to speak. So
right
I like that.
Peer, Dad, I need you as a peer. The minute my son first told me that is, Dad, I'm not coming to you for advice. I'm just coming to you as another dude. And I just want to talk. I just want to sit side beside you. Usually in a conversation when they're younger, they're dependent on us, and it's us in this position and them in this position. We're talking, they're receiving. But as they move, I believe our jobs are to help them transition from dependence to independence. And so in that form of independence, instead of this, there's this side by side. And we are now walking through life together instead of me giving instruction, which it will happen as an adult. But I guarantee this, there might also be the reverse, and they give some instruction to you as they become adults. So from dependent to independent, it's almost a different road that they're learning and what we're helping them become.
Yeah, that's good. It's almost like the first, I'm just using the number 18 because that's typically when kids graduate and leave home for college, whatever. But it's almost like those first 18 years are really class for us as well. It's like preparation for the rest of life. And it's not just this, all right, I'm going to try really hard here. And all the more reason to go slow and to get it right. I mean, 18 years goes quick, but it's also 18 years. So you want to continually have conversations, continually engage them at their level, pour into them unconditional love, pour into them grace, mercy, instruction, all of that, because 19 comes after 18, and it doesn't stop just because you want it to. So you lead me into a thought that I think is really good, and we talked about this a little bit last night. You sent me this as a potential question or thought you had, but it's in this area of giving advice to your children. It can look very different. Maybe you could speak a little bit to what it's like from a child's perspective when we give advice to now that they're grown adults. Like we were saying, I need you to be a peer. So how do we do that as they grow up? What's the contrast?
When I don't consider it too much advice when they're beneath the age 18 and under. It's more instruction. At that point, hopefully biblically taught instruction or life learned instruction, but it's mostly a teaching opportunity when they're younger. I think you're instructing them in the ways. When they become adults, you have to be careful because unsolicited advice or instruction will be interpreted as criticism, no matter how you put it and when you put it out. It will come back as unsolicited criticism. And that is not received well by a young adult, especially when they didn't ask you. And so I think that comes into that key of, are we listening to hear their hearts and what's going on? Are we listening to respond? Because sometimes as when they're younger, we kind of have canned responses. I mean, if you've had multiple kids, you know the answers to the questions before they're asked. So it's sometimes it's automatic for what comes out. But when they're adults, your canned response doesn't work anymore because not every response works for every situation. And secondly, it would be to understand their culture. They're not the same culture as we were growing up. We weren't the same for our parents growing up. And so their culture has a lot, especially today, the digital, the university, there's so much more input than there ever was before. The world has so many more ways to have touch points in their lives. And so being able to listen, to hear, and then respond, if you respond at all. I've had many conversations where one of my sons will just talk and I won't say a word to the end, and it'll just be, hey man, I love you. And that was it. But that was probably the best course of action in anything, because he just wanted to be beside me and have a conversation. And I just think of Moses sitting in the tent. So look, I can never say of Moses sitting in a tent in the Exodus, times of Exodus, and he's having a conversation with Jesus, and this New Testament, it's like having as one would have with a friend. He's having a conversation, and that's sometimes just what our kids want. They just want to have a conversation. They want to see us as we're their mentors. We support them. We are for them.
Yeah. And it's okay to ask questions as you do that from the start. If you're unsure, as I mentioned earlier, as far as what role your child's looking for from you, or your grown child, to say, hey, what do you need from me right now? Do you need me to just listen? Because I'm willing to do that. Are you looking for advice? Like, if you're unsure, it's okay to ask that and be comfortable with the response. Because I find most times with my grown children, like you just said, they really just want someone to talk to. They're not necessarily looking for, the Google meaning behind everything in life, which we can
There's even some different rules for how we fight with our kids, because no matter what, you're going to have that adversarial confrontation when they're adult kids, especially when they're adult kids. Pull the "I'm 18 and older" card, and you can't tell me what to do. I'm an adult, kind of thing. And my bride really helped me learn this with just her sweet nature. As she taught me one day that, we fight to win the relationship. We don't fight to win the battle.
Yeah.
And so it even changes how I learned how to fight with my kids.
Yeah.
In a sense, how I learned how to talk to them, and even hard confrontations. The mindset was, my goal isn't just to have the right answer to win the fight. My goal is to have the right frame of mindset so that I win the relationship, so that they know, okay, dad really does care. I mean, my youngest son and I, if there's a difference in anything, I mean, doesn't matter what it is, politics, religion, faith, every aspect, we are at exact opposites. But my son will tell anyone that there's one thing he does not doubt. He does not doubt that the love his parents have for him. There may be disagree on everything else, but he'll never be able to admit that we don't love him more than anything that he knows or can understand. And that comes through in our fight to win the relationship.
That's good. And I want to keep reiterating this too. It comes back to the preparatory work we do before they become adults. I never want to give just my opinion and thoughts on things. We always try and give you some scripture to back up what we're saying, or to tell you this is where we're starting from. I think the sacred text is so clear in what it expects from us as dads. I mean, obviously one of the most popular passages is in Proverbs, where we're told, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he won't leave that way. He won't depart from it. And that has been twisted a little bit, that people, well, if you train them right, they're going to turn out right. That's not always the case. They still can be prodigals. They still can struggle and everything else. But I think what Christ is getting at there in the text is, take the time while they're in your home to train them properly. Give them that solid foundation, not just biblically. Absolutely, we should be teaching them scriptures. Deuteronomy tells us that, to have the scriptures in front of our children, to remind them of what God has done, and to teach them spiritually, but also to teach them what it means to be a man in today's world. And there's this expectation God has that when we establish that foundation will remain regardless of what happens throughout their life. They will always have that they can fall back on, as God works in them, as God uses you to help them work back from wherever they may have ran from. So again, it's just so important that we as men don't just mail it in and say, well, it's my wife's job to train the child. It's not. It's your job first and foremost. Quite honestly, it's your wife's job to complement that and to come along and bring to the table what you can't bring to the table. And I think as men, sometimes we just want, I'll be the disciplinarian, or I'll be the one that teaches them, discipline and value and how to defend and all that. And yes, that's important as men. We should be doing that, but we should also teach them what it looks like to be a forgiving individual, to be a servant, to be someone that loves unconditionally through agape love, to on and on I could go, right? So we have to put in that work up front. If you're not doing that as a man, you have to start doing that now, or else when they're adults, all this stuff Bill's talking about is so good. But if you wait to start to try and do that when they're 18, 19, 20, or mid-20s or whatever, most times my experience has been they don't want to hear anything from you at that point. It's like, why would I want to hear from you? You never did this before. Now all of a sudden you want to jump in and be dad. I don't want it.
We have had some moments of complete silence from any one of our sons because of something we didn't say correctly or did wrong, and the mute button got put on there, and it took a little while to come back from that instance. But the benefit of what you said is laying that foundation when they're younger, and it doesn't matter when you start. I mean, I get it. I was blessed to be a Christian before we had a family, And so we had a healthy foundation to start from. But even if you're later in life and your kids are older and you became a Christian later on, it's never too late to start laying those foundations, those principles that build from, because when we build on that foundation of Christ, the foundation of the word in our lives, it is immovable. It is that keystone, the cornerstone that you start that building from, that cannot be torn down.
Yeah.
And it will resonate in your kids, even unexpectedly providing opportunities that we never realized. Our youngest, again, he has a battle. God definitely did an amazing work in that boy. And he will challenge us. We will say, well, you know what? All are welcome. Anybody's welcome at my table. You always have a home. The parent. You always have a home here. Whenever you need a place to come, we always love you. Our doors are always open to you. We did those typical parent speeches when they left the house, and he would challenge us. Well, do you really believe these things? Do you really say you love unconditionally? And like, yep, doesn't matter. We did that. Doesn't matter what you do in life. We will always love you. If you ever get in trouble, we'll always be there for you, type of thing. And sure enough, there were those moments. He showed up on our doorstep one day with some friends and said, hey, you said I can come over for dinner. I'm bringing my friends from university. Well, his friends from university were not the typical friends that you bring home. They were definitely, I should say, part of the Rainbow Coalition, so to speak. That's what we say. Some of my friends don't identify as we would as a male or female, right? In today's world, there's a lot of different kids, the young adults associated with a lot of different nationalities, different genders, different whatever, sexualities, it's all there. And all of a sudden there are people in my house, and it's like, and he's looking at us and he's looking at them, and it's almost like a test.
Yeah.
And by the end of the evening, one of the young people in our home is like, Mom, can I give you a hug? And I'm looking at my bride going, he just called you mom. He identifies as they, and it's just like, what happened? And my son is my youngest son still talks about it of, hey, the time I brought over the trans people to our house, you should have seen what happened. And he actually tests us, but now he knows. Now he knows. He'll try and trip us up from time to time, but he knows that foundation is there. And so even though he doesn't practice it, he knows there's something in our home that's different than other homes. And he feels comfortable enough to bring in other young adults into our house. Christmas dinner at our house is very different when there's some different people sitting at the table who normally wouldn't be at your typical Sunday, your Sunday meal. And but it does provide opportunities, as you're right. They will remember. They see and watch everything going on as they're growing up.
Yeah. And it's so, you're right. They're going to test you. They're going to evaluate, really. Are you the real deal? Or was that just because you were being a tough parent while I was growing up? I mean, I'll get that even now from my children, as far as things will come up, marriages being in trouble, career changes that you may not agree with, or timing of something they want to do in life, whether it's a car, a baby, a move, whatever. And they want to know, like, are you really going to love me unconditionally if I do something that you think is terribly wrong or against how you raised me or whatever? They're always kind of evaluating, is this going to be consistent or not be consistent? And that challenges me tremendously to want to be as authentic as possible and sincere in what I say. If I say it over here, I better live it over here, because they'll be the first ones to push away and say, well,
we hear that refiner's fire type of thing. Be a parent of a kid who wants to go against every political, ideological, sexual. I mean, you pick it on one side, and at one point or another, they may be on the other side of that. And it really humbled me to learn how to love my children for who they were, not the children that I hoped they would be. So I love the sons that I have, not the sons that I thought I would have.
Yeah, very good.
At that moment in time.
Yeah. And I want to point out, I mean, if you're watching the stream, Bill's wearing one of our sweatshirts that say "Men Do Hard Things." That's part of fathering as well. It's not easy to take your values and things that you believe and say they're not as important necessarily as loving like Christ. Right. So I'm willing to say my political stance, my cultural stance, whatever it might be, is secondary to loving people the way Christ would want me to love people. That's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to admit to your children you've done something wrong or said something wrong. I had to do that yesterday with my son, Jack, 16, and to go to him and say, you know what? I said something that was hurtful that I shouldn't have said. I was frustrated. I got angry and I lost control, which is wrong. I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. To give him a hug and say, will you forgive me? That's what men do. Men are willing to say, hey, I made a mistake. I blew it here. I'm not a perfect dad, but I'm trying. I want to do better next time. And so, and I don't say that to elevate me or to elevate Bill, as far as, you know, the analogies Bill gave there. It's just important that we understand as men, fathering is not just check a box, and it takes work. It's hard.
Oh, yeah.
But on the other side of that work is beautiful relationship. It's such a joy to have kids that want to be with you, that want to talk to you, that want to share their life with you. I think it's just an amazing gift God gives us.
I mean, they will never know how far they can go if we carry them,
Yeah,
right? And
that's
so
true.
that's the one thing we learned is the difference between enabling them and the difference between, you know, guiding them. When
Yeah.
do we do that? Sometimes in response to my kids, I've had to just put duct tape on the mouth and leave the welcome mat on the front porch, because that's all they wanted. They just wanted to be feel welcome,
Right. Right.
you know, accepted for who they are, and sometimes it's hard for us. You know, I know the answer. Just do this, but I
Yeah.
have to go. You know what? Yep, that happened. Yep, this is tough. Yep, you're gonna have to pay the consequence
Yeah.
of what you did, because only when you learn how to go through the consequence, and hopefully going through that consequence of Christ Jesus, but if not, even as a life lesson, learning that consequence on the other side of it is where you've been processed, you've been sifted, you've been
Yeah.
refined a little bit, and you're going to learn, oh, this was right, this was wrong, and this is a result of either choice.
Yeah. Especially when kids blow it, young and old. They want to know, like the prodigal, if I run back home, will the father accept me? They want to know, will I be loved? Will I be welcomed? Or is it going to be, I can't believe you did that. Like, you can't get close to me right now. I think sometimes as dads, we may not intentionally say anything like that, but I think our actions or even our attitudes can project that sometimes. And that's one of the most detrimental things you can do. Again, regardless of age, uh, that kid needs to know as a dad that you love them, you welcome them, you embrace them. Like Bill said, it doesn't mean you're condoning the mistakes they've made or that there's no consequence. But I feel like sometimes we think it's our responsibility to keep them at arm's distance as a consequence, and that's not what a good father does. A
No,
good
as
father will
you
embrace them
mentioned
through that.
in the prodigal son, you know, the father doesn't just recognize his son from a distance and go, okay, you're coming back home. Now you come and sit at my feet. And when you apologize, when you're good and ready, one of my dad's things, when you're good and ready to apologize, then you can come talk to me, you know, or something like that. Instead, the father gets up from his position of authority, right? Gets up from his spot, and he doesn't just walk, he runs towards his son.
Yeah.
And, you know, the very first thing we learn in scripture is like, okay, let's have a party. Let's get a fattened calf. Let's do all this. It was not, I told you so.
Yeah.
I told you this was going to happen. See what you did. Now you're going to have to learn.
Yeah.
He doesn't say any of that in the moment. It is just, I love you. The welcome mat is out. Come on in.
Yeah, that's
Come on
good.
in.
And let me just, in all transparency, say how that challenges me. Frequently, I've got two of my boys have some crazy wild behaviors. They're just hyper 90 miles an hour. And when they get in trouble, the meltdown is just like huge, you know, when it's just you can't even have a conversation. So frequently what we'll say, one of the methods we use is just go sit on your bed for a few minutes until you're calmed down enough to talk. When you're ready, come back in here and we'll talk, kind of thing. And that challenges me because oftentimes I'll sit on the couch or at the counter or whatever, doing what I'm doing, or I'll be in the kitchen cooking or something, and I'll wait for them to make that slow, painful walk all the way across the living room, all the way around the corner to the kitchen to where dad is or whatever. Rather than doing that, I want to get better at running to meet them, at running to engage their heart as soon as I notice them coming back to me. So that's really good. I want to keep us moving because, man, Bill, we could take 2 hours this morning, and I can't do that because I've got a jacked up neck and back right now, and I got to get to the doctor in a little while. So to keep us moving on point here, because it is so easy to talk to you. We only got about 15, 20 minutes left, which is crazy. But I want to talk about boundaries a little bit. I think this is where we as dads can struggle because we don't always know what that looks like, where to set them, how firm should they be. Just I think, again, we can default to what we knew growing up, and that's not always healthy, or what we've heard from, our neighbor and their kids seem to be perfect. So let's just do it that way or whatever. What type of boundaries should we set with our children, both teenagers, adult children? What does that look like? I mean, obviously, when children are young, I know to set appropriate boundaries. Like I'm going to put a lock on the knife drawer because I don't want my 4-year-old pulling open the drawer and playing with knives, right? That's a boundary. I know to keep them out of the kitchen, away from the stove when I'm cooking, and they're toddlers, because I don't want my little sweet Hazel or, Patrick to roll in there and grab something and burn their hand. So we can do that when they're really young, but that shifts all of a sudden when they become, preteens, teenagers, adults. What does that look like? How have you found that to play out in your life?
When our boys were younger, we tried to set boundaries that had consequences or benefits depending on how they reacted to them. And our boys didn't do too well with my style of handling things when they went wrong, when they crossed that boundary. They didn't go well because I was always doing something to them instead of them learning that their punishment was a result of them breaking that boundary. And so when they were younger, we did the whole chart thing. Hey, here's a list of things that you need to do. And we actually built a chart board, and we let them understand the punishment. So if you break this boundary, if it's the TV boundary, if it's the language boundary, if it's whatever it is, you didn't do your chore boundary, they had to pay the consequence. But the difference was they chose a consequence. So if you use foul word in front of mom, okay, then I have to do this. And what they learned was it wasn't me punishing them. It was them being punished, their own punishment as a course of their decision, their consequence for their action. They broke that boundary. In becoming adults, we had the same thing. It's, hey, when you're in our home, you have a female in the house, you have to be in a room with an open door in public, or there's no drinking, no smoking, no swearing. And of course, sometimes it's, well, I'm 18, and when I'm in my house, I can do whatever I want. I can do these things. And it was actually the reverse. I told my son, I go, you're absolutely right. When you're 18, when you have your place and I come to your house, you can use whatever language you want. It's your place. And I will not violate your boundaries. I will not come in and go, you shouldn't do this. And the good part about that is my sons quickly realized that having the freedom to make their own choices, freedom is a boundary. And they had their own freedom, and they didn't set boundaries. And all of a sudden in their own homes, things got a little out of hand. The party went a little too long. Nobody cleaned up. The atmosphere got toxic almost. And my youngest actually just a few weeks ago came back and said, hey, Dad, now I know why you set some of those boundaries, because they were needed for the protection of the home and keeping it safe, or keeping it with the right temperament, keeping things under control. And now he's like, yeah, in my place, we have some rules now when people come to my house. And some of them are reminiscent of some of the boundaries that we set when they were younger. So learning the consequence of their own actions helps them set some of their own boundaries.
That's real good. And I think biblically, one thing you see, if you read the Bible, if you've never read the Bible through all the way, you need to do that as a follower of Christ. That should be part of your life. But when you do that, one of the things you see consistently over and over is God telling his children, this is my expectation for you. I want you to live life within this boundary. And when you do, this is the result. I will bless you. The land will be prosperous for you, right? Your children will inherit and rule. And he gives all of these. This is the boundary. This is the consequence. But then he goes a step further. Now, if you don't maintain that boundary, expect this. Then I will remove my blessing. Then judgment will come. And I love that, because God models as a father how we as fathers should be when it comes to boundaries, expectations, whatever terms you want to use, but also the results of maintaining that. he gets down and he says, I want you to understand what I expect here and why I expect it and what will happen if you live within that boundary. And I grew up in a home where what I heard over and over, what I remember most about, expectations, boundaries growing up was the one phrase, because I said so. God never in scripture says, don't worship false gods because I said so. Right? He doesn't just cut it off there. There's not going to be a conversation. There's not going to be a relationship with you as my child. You just need to do everything I said. Here's the 10 commandments because I said so. He takes the time to explain it and so that the child will understand, okay, there's a pro and a con here. There's a reward that can come, but there's also a curse. There's also disaster that can come if I don't maintain that boundary. I think we as dads have to get better at that too. And not just defaulting to, well, I'm the dad and I'm the boss and I'm the one that said, I'm the parent, you're the child. Like that doesn't foster a relationship. Again, that'll work for you when they're 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. But fear and respect are two very different things. I don't want my child to grow up and do stuff because they fear me. I want them to grow up and do the right thing because they respect me, and they'll respect me because they know, hey, this is the expectation. And when you live within it, there's blessing. And I think this is really played out with teenagers. I like my son learns really quickly, oh, a phone is a blessing. And I can have that when I maintain the proper boundary around behaviors and expectations. But that can be taken away just as quickly. And cars and jobs, and we go on and on with all the blessings and the consequences, things like that. But we can't be men that just default to, because I said so, I'm the dad. I'm not saying that's never appropriate, but yeah.
I was just thinking the other thing that a boundary provides is a boundary provides protection. And the one thing that we've always done with our kids when they're younger, and we still do it now, is we bring a boundary of prayer in our family. And so, I mean, men pray for your kids when they're younger, pray for them when they're grown up, and pray around them even when they're grown up. Even to this day, there's a Rainbow Coalition sitting at our table for a meal, and we will pray. And, a lot of the times, some of these young adults are like, what the heck is going on? But keep praying because it does work. It does work. Pray on your knees. A prayer is almost a declaration of war against the enemy. And I joke with my fire team to make war sometimes. But when it comes to your children's lives, young or older, sometimes prayer is the only thing that we have. And that helps bring that boundary of protection around their lives. It is something that will never fail you. It will never fail you.
So true. And that'll transition us into the last thing I wanted us to talk about as we wrap up. And because I think it connects with it, and that is, how do we show support to our grown children? And I want to add to that caveat, even our teenage children, because I think it applies in both scenarios. How do we show support to them without supporting their values? A phrase that you brought up to me in a text message. And the reason it's important, I know of men, we have mutual friends as well, who have teenagers that politically don't view life the same way I do, or sexually they may not be walking the same path I think they should walk. Friendship, I could go on and on with different things, right? That may differ. So how do we, and I know we can parent different when they're teenagers. I'm not saying it's the exact same scenario, but we have younger people today as well as adults that have different views and different values in a culture that is quite foreign to a lot of us adults, quite honestly. So how do we show them, hey, I support you, but I don't necessarily support what you're chasing and what you're after and what you're viewing as being okay for your life. And certainly you mentioned prayer there as one of those examples to say, hey, I'm still going to do something that matters by praying over you. I'm going to show you support that way. But what are some other practical things you can think of, or things you guys have implemented, you and Miss Shelley, that work?
Our children, I mean, everybody is an image bearer of God, right? And we really try our best to see our children as image bearers of God. They may not be reflecting some of the attributes, but I want to keep seeing them the same way that Jesus sees me, in the middle of my filth, in the middle of my unhealthiness, in the middle of my travesties in life that go on, he still sees me a certain way, and I want to see my kids in that way. And so, no matter what, there is always an open dialogue of conversation. There is never a time that it's going to be you are shut off and out of our lives and not able to be near us. And so we keep that welcome mat out there. We keep that line of conversation open no matter what. Sometimes it's real hard. Sometimes I want to slam the door shut and just be like, fine, deal with it. Come back to me when you're ready to. That's another, like, you come back to me when you're ready to talk. And sometimes it can't be that way. It is a constant pursuit. And sometimes that pursuit is hard. There's mountains and valleys and rain and storms and battles that you go through. But how much did Jesus pursue me in the midst of my crap? And so when my adult children see the continuous pursuit of them, no matter what, that other stuff falls away. Like I said, my sons can be on the opposite side of the world. They can be doing the opposite of everything I want them to do, but they always come back to the foundation that they know my bride and I love them in a way that the world never can. And that seems to supersede any differences that we have, no matter what.
Yeah, that is 100%. I can tell you from personal experience, everything Bill just said is true. And I would encourage you as men, if you're listening, to begin to pray, regardless of your children's age, pray that God would give you that father's heart that would say, I will pursue them, I will love them, no matter what they do in life. Foster that heart in me, God. Because your children, and it's true if you're listening to us as a man, because you haven't you haven't done everything right as a man either. You've probably, a lot of you have made some massive mistakes, and your children are going to make massive mistakes. They're going to make decisions that you completely disagree with. They're going to go against your values and how you raise them, when it comes to maybe something like just going to a church or being part of a part of the body of Christ, or any of the numerous things that Bill and I have talked about. Will your love for them supersede the behaviors that they exhibit? That's really what it boils down to. And it's hard. It's not easy. My grown children have made numerous mistakes and choices and things that when I hear about it, it just breaks my heart, because no loving father wants to see their children suffer and go through unnecessary things. But at the same time, I want my children, like Bill just said, to know that, hey, dad loves me, mom loves me. And even though the world may be against me, I know I can go back to their doorstep and be embraced. I know I can pick up a phone and call, and Bill's going to answer, Travis is going to answer. They're going to be willing to listen. And, we've talked about some really challenging and hard things, like, boundaries and consequences and all these different things, and parenting adult children versus younger children. But it really comes back to what you're talking about, Bill. It comes back to this heart that really models the heart of the father, right? That is willing to leave the 99 to pursue the one. So it raises the question, are we that?
Yeah. I think for me, it boils down to, what are you willing to do?
Yeah.
What are you willing to do? The father was willing to give up his son.
Yeah.
How much are you willing to give up in that pursuit of that relationship? And what, and your children are watching that. What changes are you willing to make in order for that to happen? And when we model that, because I hear a lot from others, well, they never listen. I'm tired of talking. They never listen. What happens if you stop talking and the next conversation could have been the one where they were willing to listen?
Yeah. I like, it doesn't necessarily connect specifically to what Bonifer wrote about cheap grace versus extravagant grace, but really you kind of have to ask that question: what am I giving my child here? How am I fathering them? And in all transparency, I have two children from my first marriage. One's an adult and one's finishing high school, and right now neither of them talk to me. My younger one talks to me every once in a while, but my older daughter, and I know we have men that listen to this that have similar scenarios where their children don't have anything to do with them, or are just completely severed the relationship in life for whatever reason. It may not be divorce, it may not be anything. It just could be a difference that's taken place. And here's the thing: how do you keep your arms open and say, I love you, I'm here, I'm going to pursue you even from a distance, even if you want nothing to do with me? I still want you to know radical grace from me. I want you to know that I love you unconditionally, and that's never going to change, no matter how painful you might make life, no matter how difficult it is for me. It's back to that men do hard things. It's not easy to love somebody and continually put your heart out there when they want nothing to do with you. But that's part of what it means to love radically like Christ, is to say, hey, I'm going to continually, even though you're doing things that are harmful, even though you're doing things that I would completely disagree with, I'm still going to love you in a radical, and I'll use that word again, agape type way, because that's what we're called to. And anything else that we do as men and as fathers, we're missing the mark. We're missing the mark. And one of the things I want to hear from Christ someday is, Travis, you were a good father. I don't have to be a great father. I don't have to be the best father that earth had, but I would love for him to say, hey, you know what? You were a good dad, and that made me happy. What an awesome thing to have God say about you. I long for that someday. I'm going to let you kind of have our final word here, and then I'll wrap us up.
Along the lines of what you just said, I think the same thing. I would love for Jesus to tell me, thank you for loving his children. And when I think about that, yeah, he gave them to me for stewardship for a period of time, but I want him to say the same thing. He challenges Peter in the New Testament: love my children, love my sheep, love the flock the way I have. And I want to be able to do that because they are his first and foremost, and I just have the blessing to be a steward over them. So, love his children, man.
Yeah,
love his children.
That's so good. We're going to end it on that note. There's nothing more to say to that. That's just very powerful. So, thank you all again for listening or watching. If you're catching the playback again on YouTube, we're just thankful again just to have a platform to share some conversation with you guys. Hopefully Holy Spirit gave you something. As always, every conversation that I have in a podcast, Bill, I leave with multiple things that it's like, okay, I need to start implementing that. I need to start looking into that. I need to start wrestling with that in my life and asking Christ to change this element. It's so beautiful, especially when it happens with natural friends like you. So thank you for being a part of this, for being part of my life. I look forward to many more conversations personally with you about our children. Bill and I are blessed he knows my children. He's been in my home. And so we get to share a lot about our kids with one another and what they're doing, where they're at, what's happening in life. And it's the joy of brotherhood. It's the joy of men doing life with one another. I can't encourage you guys enough. On that note, if you're new to our ministry, I want to encourage you, go to our website, movministries.org, movministries.org. On that website, you'll find information to all the things that we provide as a ministry, specifically our community webpage through the Band, B-A-N-D, Band app. I want to encourage you, if you're looking to connect with men, we have men from literally all over the world that have chosen to join us in community there. Guys post a lot of encouragement and challenging things there, but it's also an opportunity to get prayer, opportunity to build some relationships. So you can check that out. Of course, we have merchandise, information about our annual conference, which will be next August in 2024. That's always our big yearly event. Can't wait. Bill's been a part of that and brings so much to the table there. Some of you will know Bill from your attendance at the conference. So want to encourage you, check all that out. And if you need anything from us, please just reach out and let us know. We would love to continue to be an encouragement for you. And again, prayerfully, this will spur on some conversations in your connectivity with other men to talk about what it means to be a father and where you can get better at and what you feel God's really doing and churning up inside your heart. As always, guys, we love you. Thank you for joining us. And as our leader always tells us, Mr. Eric Stewart, hey, go light it up for the King. God bless.
We hope you've enjoyed today's episode and that you will continue to join us on this journey to make disciples of men. Be sure to check out our social media outlets as well as movministries.org for any information, and be sure to join our digital men's community.
Hey guys, we wanted to let you know that Men of Valor podcast is proud to partner and be a part of the Recovering Fundamentalist Podcast Network. You can find their podcast and many other great podcasts by going to rfpnetwork.org. We would love for you to go and check them out as well. Hey, keep fighting, win today, and as always, go light it up for the King.